Pursuant to Section 84-1412 of the Nebraska statutes, the public is hereby informed that a current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is published in the north wall. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Dr. McFarland, please call the roll.
Erdenberger. Full. Head.
Present.
Holman.
Present.
Juarez. Kratky. Smith.
Here.
Thielen.
Here.
Cassidy.
Here.
7 here, 7 present.
All right. Do we have a, actually it's a workshop, so we don't have to excuse absences. Moving on to public comment and recognition. Dr. McFarland, do we have any public comment filed this time?
No.
All right. Moving on then to new and miscellaneous business. Item E1, action items. E1A, approval of the report of the Legislative Committee, including recommended legislative positions. We'll move over to the Legislative Committee Chair, Ms. Erdenberger.
Thank you very much, President Head. The Legislative Committee met for another couple hours on Thursday night to follow up on the bills that had not yet been introduced when we had met the preceding Thursday, I think it was. So we did have a chance to complete all the rest of the bills. I think you've got in front of you on the agenda the positions that we have adopted for them. There's going to be, it's going to be a busy week because the Education Committee is having several hearings, I think maybe even as many as a dozen hearings over the course of the next week. And Mr. Ryan, Mr. Head, and I will all be testifying at some point or another. But I guess I move on part of the committee that the board adopt the positions we've taken with respect to the legislation.
All right, thank you. We have a committee motion to approve the recommended positions. It doesn't require a second. Do we have any discussion? All right, seeing none, Dr. McFarland, please call the roll.
Kratky. Smith.
Aye.
Thielen.
Aye.
Cassidy.
Aye.
Erdenberger. Head.
Aye.
Holman.
Aye.
7 aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. And I know policy says people are allowed to submit a pink card for public comment in the first 5 minutes, and I think it was 6:03 when we moved on to new business, so just check again. Any public comment? All right. So moving on then to item E2A, evidence equality teaching, the learning framework and effective learning environment observation tool with Ms. Suzanne Kramer and Ms. Susan Christofferson.
Good evening, President Head, Vice President Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Ray. This year, we've been providing information items, workshops, and a steady cadence of receipts of report, all aligned with our ongoing continuous improvement efforts. These efforts include aligning metrics from the classroom to the boardroom and supporting one continuous improvement process across our district, all while being laser focused on evidence of improvement. Tonight, you'll have the opportunity to learn more about how our district's learning framework and the Elliott, a tool we mentioned in August, will come together to improve teaching and student engagement. So why alignment? You've seen this slide before a couple of times. It's an important reminder for why we are undertaking the essential work of alignment as part of our improvement efforts. A key lever for systems improvement is alignment, which depends on aligning behaviors and decision-making to a collectively owned vision and strategy. The learning that you're engaging in this evening is the same topic and the same learning as our instructional and building leaders have been engaging in part of during the last few principal meetings and earlier this semester. This is an intentional strategy intended to continue developing our shared understanding of effective schools. This fall, I also shared this slide, which outlines the resources available to us as part of our Cognia membership. In addition to a shared understanding of effectiveness, Cognia offers tools to support predictable monitoring for evidence of consistent experiences and improved results. Tonight, we're going to focus on the Effective Learning Environment Observation Tool, or the Elliott, which we can use to measure student engagement in all of our classrooms across our district. Later on, Susan will be sharing more about our learning framework. The Omaha Public Schools Learning Framework represents our vision for quality experiences for all students. Accreditation helps us understand if we're implementing well, where we have strengths and work to do relative to common performance standards. Together, Cognia's research-based performance standards and the OPS Learning Framework represent a shared understanding we need to achieve measurable, consistent results.
The OPS Learning Framework represents our vision for quality classroom experiences for all students. Accreditation in general and the Elliott helps us to better understand if we are implementing well across our system at the classroom level, where we have our strengths and work to do and relative to common performance standards. The creation and delivery of this resource, the Omaha Public Schools Learning Framework, was a collaborative effort with many stakeholders, including members from Student and Community Services, School Improvement and Accountability, Talent Services, Curriculum and Instruction Support, schools, teachers, leadership. The Learning Framework is designed to define what high-quality instruction is and should be in our classrooms, and it is founded in the ideation that we as a system need to see ourselves as a community of learners, and for that we must create a strong learning culture for all. We know underneath any good learning lie invisible structures. Our learning framework provides a mindset and structure to help make the invisible visible. Teaching is complex. It is both an art and a science. Research supports that school districts need explicit frameworks to help demonstrate what we want to improve. The Omaha Public Schools Learning Framework provides clarity to our work, consistency in what our expectations are, a common language for all of us to engage with, a focus aligned to continuous improvement, and it's about inclusivity of every learner, students, teachers, paraprofessionals, and administrators. We're all learners in our system. A high overview of what our components are is we have the learning culture, which contains clarity on what are high expectations and how we define safe and supported classrooms. Learning experiences is about engagement through quality classroom instruction and literacy for college, career, and life. We want to build upon where we start with early literacy and build that all the way through the senior year to readiness for post-secondary experiences. And our third component is reflection and results. It's about feedback for students and staff so that we're all growing and learning. It's about data literacy. It's about understanding what our data is and how that drives our instruction to improve instruction. And of course, the importance of self-reflection, because as learners, we should always be reflecting. This slide, where you'll find the OPS Learning Framework, it's a part of One OPS. It's on the staff side of our website. And I'm going to walk you through a couple of this just initial front-facing slides. And the top is the learning framework defined. And then the blue, learning culture, learning experiences, and reflection and results. If you click on those, it takes you to deeper document. So it's our overview front page. And then we also have resources. One of the developments of the learning framework was we have a plethora of tools within our district, and people were needing to search in multiple places to find it. So part of the learning framework was we had many of these tools, but it was about aligning and pulling all the tools together so that we were having a common language no matter what the department was or which school you were in. So the resources, we have actually defined our academics. So if I am a kindergarten teacher, I know what academics looks like in ELA pre-K through 12th grade in our district, and the curriculum guides and everything are accessible. We share and ensure that everybody understands what our coaching model is throughout the district. School improvement, the Elliott Crosswalk, which you're going to experience, is also located there. So every person within the Omaha Public Schools, if I work as a transportation or if I'm a part of the nutrition services, I can go into the OPS Learning Framework and better understand, because we want all of us talking about learning and not just singularly certain groups. We want everybody talking about learning. So the next piece that comes up is we actually define academics. With your help and support, we have been able to adopt many amazing resources, high quality instructional materials for our teachers' hands. We want to define what that means, what it means to have a guaranteed and viable curriculum within our district and how that matters. And then that document alone has multiple categories that help to support. And then we have taken, and this was feedback from teachers as well, is what do they want to have quick links to? Instead of searching a wide variety of places, we have honed it into one page of a quick link. So if I'm looking for curriculum guides for early childhood, I can click on that, and that takes me to all of the curriculum guides for early childhood. Additional guidelines, retention and acceleration process. It's not a secret. This is what we do. This is how you go about it. If you want to learn or know more, click in there to better understand. MTSS guidance, special education handbook. You'll see lesson planning. We actually have a work group right now. OEA and teachers, CIS, multiple departments coming together to redesign what we're doing for lesson planning. And then, of course, just additional resources, our PLC toolkit, anything, and we've added along the way as we've received feedback. One of the tools that we have worked to create is actually in conjunction with Cognia, and the Elliott tool itself is how does what we have in the learning framework align and support? So when you're going into a classroom and observing, or I am a teacher and I'm working on parts of the Cognia observation tool that you're aware of, how might the resources within the learning framework help and support me as I'm growing and learning as an educator? And we'll share a document as well as we do a practice activity. The learning framework is used in a multitude of ways for lesson planning and prep. Our professional learning communities, which is where our teachers come together to collaborate. School improvement academic focus. If their school is focused on something, how might the resources and tools inside the learning framework help and support? Inside the learning framework, every area has a self-reflection guide, so you can actually, as an educator, look and see where you're at and grow from there. Coaching conversations, as well as any sort of professional learning. One of the feedbacks that we heard from teachers was, we want to see our principals, or as we're putting together presentations, that you're actually utilizing the tools that have the right effect size, so you're modeling that for us. And so when we're preparing professional learning, we're actually pulling these same resources, these same strategies to present to our staff.
So how will we know if our learning framework is being implemented well? If the coaching and school improvement strategies we're working on are affecting the student experience? After all, what we're looking for is to have our strategies and the work that we're doing make it to the desk of every child, to the table of every child. The Elliott is the classroom observation tool, which focuses solely on student engagement. And so this is a shift in thinking. This is a K-12 tool that allows us to look at what the student is doing, saying, and learning, not necessarily focused on what the teacher is doing or saying. And that's an adjustment for us as we move forward. It tells us how students are acting, reacting, and benefiting from the implementation of our learning framework. Results from classroom visits using the Elliott will be an essential point for understanding the impact of our improvement efforts within the academic priority of our strategic plan of action. During the improvement cycle, school teams engage in the plan, do, check, act cycle. Data from the Elliott is used during the check portion of this cycle, helping teams understand if the learning framework is being implemented with integrity, if professional learning and coaching are effective, and what the next steps might be for teachers and teams. So just like in our assessment workshop, we wanted to give you an opportunity to experience just a small snippet of the Elliott training that our instructional leaders have been engaging in. As a reminder, Susan shared, and I think you have it in your folder, the alignment document that shows how the learning framework and the Elliott are connected. For this portion of the workshop, we're going to be zooming in on the active learning environment. So in front of you, you have a paper that has yellow highlights. Yep. And you're going to be zooming in on the yellow, zooming in on the active learning environment. So you're going to watch a video that all of our principals have watched and all of our instructional leaders are being trained in. And you're going to be looking for discussions, real-world connections, and collaboration. These indicators are aligned to the learning experiences domain from the OPS learning framework. For example, a school might commit to a school improvement strategy for improving opportunities for academic conversations aligned to grade level texts and standards. After an initial professional learning with teachers and follow-up coaching, an improvement team might then visit classrooms to analyze student engagement connected to active learning in order to understand if their efforts have shifted the student experience in the classrooms. So on your paper with the highlighted yellow portions, you're going to kind of, the narrator will walk you through this learning environment, tell you a little bit about each indicator that's highlighted, and then as you're watching the students, you're going to kind of look at what's evident, what's very evident, what's not observed, and then we'll have some discussion after this really short video.
In summary, Environment D, active learning, ensures that students are engaged in activities that inspire learning by doing. In the previous lessons, you viewed examples of the items in Environment D that illustrated how learners engaged in meaningful discussions with their teachers and other students. Learners made connections to previous experiences and to new learning. Learners also were actively engaged in various learning activities. This learner-centric environment promotes student collaboration with peers to achieve learning goals. In this video, look for examples of each item demonstrated during the observation.
smell it, right? Well, here's what it smells like, what it feels like. It feels gooey to me. Because it's wet. Ooh, that's a good word, though.
Roly poly. The roly poly. No, put him on the paper. It's supposed to be like put him on mine.
What'd you write?
Okay.
I love that.
Put him on my paper.
So I'm gonna take this worm because it's a really cool worm, and I want it, but I also want to see what else is in our soil. So let's dig through. What is this? Yeah, this is a what kind of leaf do you think? It's a rotten leaf. That's a great way to describe that. So let's put that down. A rotten leaf. Can you sound those words out? Rotten leaf and draw it on him.
Rachel, what are you going to write?
Where'd he go?
What do you see? What else? What all is in the dirt? There are what? Leaves. We see leaves in the dirt. Yeah, we see acorns in the dirt, right?
Leaves.
What else? We see bugs, right? I love it. Gil's doing. He's writing what he's seeing. Beautiful, Gil. You need to start writing, Ryan. Good, Rachel. Boy. Good, Eva.
What are you seeing?
This classroom may seem
So just pausing there with that little brief video, our instructional leaders would be engaging in the video, scoring it, and then having discussion around what they rated in terms of student engagement. And then we also have each individual school is doing some calibration rounds in their own buildings across this semester to be calibrated around what do I agree with what you're observing? Do we all have a common understanding of what this engagement looks like? And so as you all were watching that, what did you notice about student engagement? What were the students doing, discussing? What were they speaking about?
I think they were kind of relating to the different items that are showing up on their table and kind of making that real world connection. That maybe stuff they see in the backyard. I don't know the scientific name for roly polies, but that was cute. And I don't know if it was a centipede, maybe a caterpillar, but just the things that they've been exposed to, bringing them to the learning environment.
It made me realize I was glad I taught high school. Because otherwise I would just sit there all day going, oh, they're so cute. But they were all totally engaged with what they were doing and whipping out their magnifying glasses. And it looked for the most part pretty cooperative for as much as it could be. At least the two kids at the far back were cooperating. The two at the front were kind of doing their own thing. But and the teacher came by but didn't helicopter and was letting them make a mess and do what they needed to do to complete their assignment. So that's what I saw.
I also thought it was a little noteworthy that they were all individually shaking their dirt and roly-polies, but they were also collaborating with each other at times. They kind of all gravitated when the little girl at the table had something, they kind of all went around her, and then vice versa when another student would find a different object. So they were independent, but yet they were working together, I think, as well.
So in looking at your tool in the active learning environment, the highlighted portions, you would go down and say what parts, which indicators were evident, very evident, or not observed, which sometimes it's a 20-minute observation, maybe it's not observed, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that that's negative, it just wasn't there at that particular time. So we'll watch the rest of the video and they'll tell us what a common sort of ranking of that would be. Oh, sorry.
The little guy on this end, he was kind of interested in what the other people were doing. And in my thinking, because he was writing down, and I don't think he was writing down what he saw on paper at the other place, I thought he was I thought he must be pretty ahead of them. He just wanted to keep going, is what I thought. Did I see that right? But they were just, as she said, so adorable that you know, after you, and I was elementary, so I mean, I just thought they were adorable. Each had such a personality. It just stuck out there, and I wanted to know them better. So are they at the rest of the slides? Do we see them anymore? That's too bad. They were cute.
Here to you. You've seen this kindergarten class in previous videos. The learners were actively engaged in an activity that required them to sift through soil to make discoveries. It was easy to hear lots of voices talking in the background with learners collaborating. The activity was hands-on and minds-on, as the learners were not only making discoveries, but also telling and drawing about what they discovered in their soil samples. The children were asking questions such as, "What is this stuff?" as well as sounding out and writing words such as B-U-G, bug. These young learners were quite involved in their learning. It's easy to see why the items in the environment would be rated very evident. The learners in this classroom were all actively engaged in an activity that encouraged discovery and helped them to connect their learning to previous and new experiences. It also was evident that students were collaborating with peers throughout the learning activity to achieve individual and common learning goals. The quality of the learners' engagement was at a high level because they had to extend their discovery by telling and/or writing, made the activity complex for the learners. Remember, when observing an active learning environment, notice whether or not the learners are accustomed to being engaged in their learning. Think about the quality and complexity of their engagement, whether it is at a higher and deeper level or more along the line of superficial or simple application.
So again, as we're thinking about the experiences, the evidence aligned to the portrait of a graduate that we're wanting to create for our students and the support that we want to give to schools as they focus their school improvement plans, as teachers do their unit and lesson planning, the Elliott offers us a really important tool to understand what's happening in each of our classrooms on one of the most important measures we have, which is student engagement. And so Susan's going to talk a little bit about then how we can use the data from this tool to inform our next steps.
So based on the Elliott tool you have and what is yellow highlighted, as you look at the other tool that you have right next to you, which is the framework alignment document, which takes you down the left-hand side, which is the Cognia Elliott observation tool and all of its standards. And then it's a correspondence to the learning framework. And these are all, they can go back and forth. So it could happen after an Elliott occurs. And after you've gone through and observed many classrooms, there's a realization that we might need to go back and spend some time having some conversation about what does academic discourse look like. So then we would go into the framework and go into academic discourse, do a self-evaluation of where do you personally feel you're at, what are some things that I could be doing as an educator to help improve that, and what could the students be doing in the classroom to help improve that? Or it could be vice versa of we've done some professional learning with inside during our time that we have together, whether it's at a staff meeting or a PLC time, and we're diving deep into building prior knowledge. And we've then done an entire a lesson as a collective staff on what that looks like, or at a grade level team that we're working on building prior knowledge because we notice that's something our students are needing help and support with, that you can go into the learning framework and it gives you some tools, some resources. We're even currently working on developing some videos to help support. That's one of the things that teachers have asked for. And we're always adding to it as we find things to help build what the teachers might be needing to help improve that area. And a lot of times what it also does, it helps to validate for teachers, I'm on the right track. I am doing the right things that will positively impact the learning in my classroom. The tools that we have chosen in and apart are a part of Hattie's work in looking at those effect sizes in a classroom that really are going to make a difference and trying to eliminate out the things that don't have that type of high impact. And so we're trying to focus in on the things that have a high impact in the classroom.
So after the Elliott observations are conducted, that data, which is collected via an online application, then goes into a dashboard. And our school improvement teams will use that data to ensure that instruction is learner-centric, to triangulate data, to bring together different data points to inform their understanding, and to track outcomes for initiatives. And so on this slide, I've included some snapshots of how the data will appear on that dashboard to school improvement teams. So they can see the average observation ratings by domain, grade level, instructor, observer, and even the lesson segment. So is it the beginning or middle or end? And schools will be able to track that engagement progress over time and check it just in time to see if they are making a difference. This slide shows the implementation work we've completed thus far related to our learning framework and the Elliott. After this year, all of our principals and leadership teams will be trained observers, and school improvement strategies will be aligned to the learning framework. As part of our systems of support for continuous improvement, principal supervisors lead both elementary support teams and secondary support team visits to schools twice per semester. These visits use a common agenda template with details developed by each school principal. School teams receive coaching around their improvement efforts, and beginning next year, these visits will use the Elliott as a common data collection for each visit. And so our key takeaways for this evening, our learning framework is an all-inclusive resource that provides a common language for a shared vision of student-centered teaching and learning. Guidance is driven by high expectations, inclusivity, and exemplifies the attributes of the OPS portrait of a graduate. Teachers and schools can use the learning framework to guide improvement strategies, planning, and coaching. The Elliott tool then allows Omaha Public Schools to have a common tool to measure student engagement, and engagement data is an important metric for school improvement to know if we're implementing well. Thank you so much, and we'll take any questions you might have.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'll open it up for questions, colleagues. Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Smith.
Are there, and I'm sure it is, like peer observations where they can go through one kindergarten teacher with another kindergarten teacher saying, this is what I'm seeing in my classroom, and how do you implement yours?
We most definitely have those experiences happening in our schools. Some schools are at a readiness level for that already, and some schools are working on building that type of learning culture, but yes, we would be able to support that as well.
Ms. Erdberger?
Thank you, Mr. Head, and thank you for the presentation. It's very exciting, and I think that the other teachers on the board can appreciate the emphasis on engagement. I have several questions just to make sure that I understood what we were talking about. There was this slide that looked like this, and where is that? I'm sorry, it's number 9 on here.
We're going to see if we can log into the website so you can actually see it and walk you through it a little bit more of the details.
It's on our page 9.
It is on your page 9 because I just took snapshots from it. But yes, we can walk you through some of the resources so you can see the detail that has been included. So on the one OPS page, under curriculum and instruction support, there's actually, teachers can actually put an icon on their desktop and just click, it goes directly to there as well. So as Suzanne opens the learning framework, it takes you to that initial page that I showed you the snapshot of. And if you go into learning culture, we'll just click on one. It walks you through, there's two tabs, the high expectations and safe and supported environment, like we spoke of, that there's the two elements. And then if Suzanne, under high expectations, it's defined, and if you click on efficacy and beliefs on achievement, it takes you to a tool that helps you to define what collective teacher efficacy is and the impact that it has. And if you'll scroll, it walks you through growth mindset, all of those, and then it helps to say, here are the teacher actions, here would be the student actions that you would be seeing, and additional resources to help and support. We continue to add to it daily. Teachers give us feedback on what might be beneficial for them to have in and a part of it, or as we're going into classrooms and seeing some things, oh my gosh, this would be a great resource to add, or something we saw in the classroom that just helps to elevate what it looks like in different ways. If you go. And just the resources that I pointed out at the bottom. So for academic model, if you want to click on academic model. The nice thing is if a teacher chooses to download these and put them on their desktop, they'll change in real time. So we had a version that everything was printed, and then we ended up using a lot of stickers to kind of fix things, or we realized something was misspelled. This way it stays live, and so if we add a link, they automatically get access to it as well. But as they go through this, it helps to anyone and everyone throughout the entire district to better understand, what does music look like in the Omaha Public Schools? What are our guiding principles? What are some of the activities that our students have a chance to participate in music? But then it also links to the SharePoint that helps. It's another way to get to curriculum guides, materials, and resources, and what does all of that currently look like? We are currently, actually, Wednesday night, we're getting feedback. We've received feedback from teachers on a relook of our curriculum guide. Right now, they could be 170 pages. That's a lot of document. And so we have been streamlining what that looks like without losing the content. And we've redeveloped that, and we are getting some feedback from them on Wednesday night on if it's meeting the mark, what might we need to change. We just want to make sure that everything is easily accessible to them, and they're not having to go and hunt for things when the materials can be all right there in front of them. So I don't know if that kind of helps to kind of navigate through what that looks like for them.
It kind of makes me think of a further question, because there's everything you could possibly want if you want to go through here. Do we train the staff on what's here and where to find it? Because my eyes are glazing over with the notion of trying to navigate through all of this.
That's very fair. We approached it from two different ways. So one approach is that through school improvement planning, what is your area of focus? So your school might be honing in on one particular area. So the principal's actually taking the resources and utilizing as a part of their professional learning, or it's something that we might be focusing in, so we're showing people how to find it. The other thing is we have some exceptional teachers, and for some teachers, just being able to get in and really see what's available to them without just doing small drops of information. Some teachers have gotten into this, and they are giving us a lot of feedback on what could be added. So we've designed it so that you can approach it in a multitude of different ways. And it's also thinking about not just what's happening for our students as a part of the learning culture, but what is also happening for our teachers. How are we ensuring that we're having collaborative conversations that all help us grow, that we can feel vulnerable? If I'm not sure what collective efficacy is, I don't need to feel judged. I can go and look through this. I can have some conversations and be able to come back and be a part of the conversation versus always being a state of wondering. I've heard people say this word multiple times. I don't know what that means, but trying to help and define how it can be approached from a multitude of ways.
You answered one of my next questions, which was, you know, is there a loop for making changes? And clearly there is. Thank you very much. I thought that the observation tool that you handed out with the 5 or 6 different categories, I can't help but ask, is this, I mean, I hate the notion of changing what a lesson plan is supposed to look like, and hopefully if it's part of the new lesson plan requirement, something got removed, but are these things that are highlighted so that a teacher, again, common language, so that every teacher in OPS kind of recognizes this A through G categories of expectations?
I'll let Suzanne take a part of that. The Elliott is not unfamiliar to our secondary schools. It's been a part of the tool that we've used for accreditation for, I don't know, 15 years or so. It's evolved a bit. So it's not unfamiliar. The growing part is happening a little bit more on the elementary side. They haven't had the same experience. In knowing this was a potential direction as we developed the learning framework, we kept the Cognia standards in mind. And so the people who are helping to lead the lesson plan are also aware of what these look like. And it's not about having them word for word. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that we're trying to extract out because of the high quality instructional materials we've adopted. A lot of the lessons are there. So how are we taking what we can from the tools and making notes in there instead of transferring them from one document to another document out of compliance efforts, mm-hmm. of just ensuring that we're making the tools more usable and readily accessible.
That's very comforting.
I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
I think the only thing I would add that the root sort of research of all of these tools is common. So Marzano, mm-hmm. Hattie, Danielson sort of are the big 3 that you would see across the Elliott tool, the learning framework, and then even our evaluation, right? Mm-hmm. So we're getting that alignment slide is even sort of at the core of what's a part of all of these tools.
Last question. And that is, you mentioned calibration, and it shows up on one of the slides here that that's starting to happen in April, I think. By April 2024, school teams complete calibration. Can you explain what you mean by that and how it's happening?
So in a couple of different ways, we already have a structure at the elementary level where elementary support teams are meeting twice a semester with an agenda generated by principals to sort of have a systems check on their school improvement plan. And as a part of that, they go into classrooms to have conversations around what they're seeing relative to their school improvement focus. The Elliott is becoming part of that. And so then at the elementary level where they may only have one observer, it's really beneficial mm-hmm. to have external eyes to calibrate around what they're seeing in terms of student engagement. And so that's a part of that structure. At the secondary level, we are piloting our having SSTs this semester. Next year, all of our secondary schools will have that systems check on their school improvement plans, and we will engage in the Elliott at that time. And so right now, Principal Supervisor Tom Wagner is working with principals and leadership teams, and we have kind of a skeleton agenda that we provided for them on how they bring their leadership team together to go into classrooms, use the Elliott, even if it's on paper or online, however they want mm-hmm. to do it, and have those conversations around what does very evident mean at South High, at North High, mm-hmm. so on and so forth. And so they're doing that across this semester in all of our schools.
So it creates consistency
yes.
from one school to the next. I guess I did have one other question. When you're very evident, somewhat evident, not observed. I feel like the not observed leaves a lot to the imagination because, like you said, not observed could be this particular lesson wouldn't have this thing, or you could be saying the teacher missed the boat and this should be here and it's not. How do you make the distinction between an okay not observed or a needs improvement not observed?
A couple of things I would say is shifting the lens to the students. Mm-hmm. So we're not watching really what the teacher's doing, we're observing the student behaviors language, interactions, collaboration, and so forth. And then the hope is that there will be more than one data point, right? So when you have a larger data set and you're looking at it over time at different points in time across large cross sections of classrooms, then that isn't necessarily an outlier that impacts. So we're looking at over time a breadth of data. What are we seeing in terms of student engagement in schools and classrooms?
Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience, everyone.
Thank you. Any other questions, colleagues? Dr. Holman?
Not a question, just a couple comments. I was going to also comment on your last question, Ms. Erdenberger, about the not observed. I think in our last cognitive advisory meeting, I brought up the not observed for because typically for the digital resources part, it seems like, especially pre-COVID, utilization of digital resources was not as observed as they are now, but still sometimes the utilization may not be happening during that particular visit. And so we were just discussing how sometimes this does appear like it's negative and it might bring down a total score or what have you, but still just having the conversations with the teachers and then just having that understanding as well, as though it just may not have been observed, because you're not really in there for a very long amount of time. It's not like I'm not sure how we're doing it in OPS, but at least for the actual external visits, you're not in there for like a full lesson all the time. You're in and out in multiple classrooms, so there's a huge chance that you may not observe some of the different things within the domains. But still, I'm just excited that you all got an opportunity to actually look at a video of a classroom engagement and do a partial experience of evaluating using the Elliott tool, because it's really a phenomenal tool and very helpful. And what I really appreciate, I know that you all put forth a lot of work to be able to crosswalk and align the learning framework with the Elliott tool. And so this is wonderful. I can't imagine the amount of hours that this took to do, but certainly appreciative and demonstrative of what high quality instruction is and should be in our classroom. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Juarez?
Thank you, Mr. Head. So my question's coming from somebody who doesn't have a teaching background, okay? Hopefully I won't sound too stupid with my question, but I'm trying to understand how you're going to make a transition like this with all of the new student teachers. And I'm wondering, is this something that they get exposed to already in college so that it's really not a foreign topic to them? I'm just concerned about that transition.
I think that is a very fair question, because they probably would not have this type of experience or exposure. So as a part of the work that we have the opportunity to do is we're actually introducing the learning framework in multiple ways with our new teachers in our meetings that we're having with them, and that we have prioritized the entire first semester was getting in to new teachers and also knowing who our student teachers are. We have a list from Mr. Wakefield so that we're going in and we're talking, and we're also making sure to introduce the resources to them so that they are familiar with the learning framework and how it can be helpful and beneficial to them in their classroom. So they're not spending hours each night looking for things, that we help them to hone in on what is the curriculum that we have purchased that has been adopted by our district, and how these resources and tools can help complement and actually design the lesson that they're preparing to deliver.
Okay. And then I had one more question, please. On one of the slides, there was the word safe up there. Do you know where I might have seen that at?
Safe.
Yeah, S-A-F-E.
Safe and supported classrooms?
Yeah, so I'm trying to understand, I guess I was concerned about that, safe. Why?
Yeah, it's this one. It's this page.
I'm going to have you go back, just scroll up a little bit and go to learning culture and safe and supported environment. And Sorry, I forgot to turn on my microphone. This safe and supported learning environment has been a beautiful blend of the work that we've been doing with Lisa Utterbach and her team in regards to MTSSB language and bringing it in as a part of the fold and not seen as something separate, that it's important that we're actually working on developing those. If you don't have the right culture to learn, it's hard to learn. And so what we have done is we have worked collectively with her department on identifying effective classroom management practices. If you would click on one of those, it's about creating a safe environment for all students to learn, to be able to feel vulnerable and be successful. And so as Ms. Kramer scrolls through, it actually defines classroom expectations, what that looks like, classroom procedures, everything in a sense helps to create a strong classroom environment for students to be able to learn well in the space and tools to help to support that. And just, they have taken their language from MTS and we have joined efforts to make sure it is located and is seen as one versus I'm doing this and now I have to think about this, because you have to think about the classroom environment as you're delivering.
Okay, so it's going to be that all students feel that the topic is something that includes all of them so that they're understanding it wherever they're at? Am I following it a little bit?
That would definitely be a part of it, because we want every student to, how we're approaching the delivery of a lesson, that students are able to build upon their background knowledge that they currently have. But we've also created a learning environment that helps to support what the expected behaviors are, so that if we're engaging in something that a student might not feel comfortable with, how are we helping to bring a student into the conversation? Not from just a teacher's standpoint, but how is the teacher creating that classroom with procedures and routines and how they're engaging with each other, how they're talking to each other, so that students feel safe learning from one another.
Okay.
Does that?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Cassidy?
I just have a couple quick comments. First of all, thank you for the presentation. From non-education, not having any kind of teaching background except for, a little bit of like Sunday school and that. It's somewhat overwhelming to like look at this and think about from a teacher's perspective, like especially new teachers, like where do I start? Where's all my resources? Where do I gather my information that I need to be successful at my job? So I really like this web, the sign-in page for the teachers where they can go and utilize. It sounds like you've put all the documents together. I think that must be really frustrating if they don't know where to go. So that's a cool piece. When you were showing that, all the teachers have access to different curriculums for any level. So if I'm a music teacher, and I've been a music teacher for 5-6 years, and maybe I'm getting a little stagnant, and I'm thinking, hey, I might want to try a different level or a different area. Maybe I want to go from elementary to secondary. Do you anticipate that having all of that available to teachers might help some teachers to be able to explore maybe different areas that they'd like to try?
That's the intention. It also helps to answer questions that people might have. So you can go, to the any grocery aisle, and somebody asks you something because you have your OPS gear on, that you would be actually able to find some of that information to better understand what's all offered as a part of our military science program. You would have access to that information. You wouldn't have to say, I don't even know that it exists, right? And it also does provide opportunity to understand how a student, their experience, how they matriculate up to where they start in kindergarten with music, and how that can build and what their experiences are in music and what that can look like. So we hope that it helps to break down any misunderstandings and also grow understandings for all the things that we do have that are such quality experiences in the Omaha Public Schools, and how it just does build upon each other. Besides just a natural scope and sequence, the experiences are just as strong beyond the scope and sequence that has been built.
Well, it just seems like a really excellent, well done area for them to just have everything at their fingertips. Okay, this might be kind of a dumb question.
Before the dumb question,
Yeah, before the dumb question. Go ahead.
There's also people behind this. It's just not the web-based. There's student community services, there's CIS, there's school improvement, so there's staff to support this. So it's not just referring people to a website. These documents used to be, for those that have been around, they used to be flip charts, I believe, yellow flip charts.
They were in a spiral-bound book that was excellent, but this helps it evolve.
Yep. And so some people may be familiar with those hard copies, but there's also people behind all of this to help that music teacher or somebody else. We're not in the business. We've got these great resources that are available, but it's the people first.
But a good starting place, correct? Okay. My next, well, I shouldn't say dumb question because there's no such thing as dumb questions, but I liked watching the piece because, again, those of us that, we're not seeing this daily, seeing how you were observing the students or the teachers or whatever the case may be, when that piece is going to be utilized, will teachers know in advance that this is going to be happening, that their students are going to be observed for part of the Elliott? I mean, do they get advance notice? I guess kind of is what I'm asking.
Absolutely. So a part of our school improvement work is ensuring that our school improvement teams have teachers on them, and that those teachers are active in the process of data analysis, looking at root causes and determining what that school's strategy should be, and then what the progress monitoring looks like and when, and so on and so forth. And so absolutely, when there's going to be an elementary support team visit, or they're setting forth what their kind of schedule of progress monitoring for the year would be, it would absolutely include those communication about purposeful visits and what that looks like and how we're going to use that data then on the other side. And I'll just say one thing that I'm really excited about from the improvement perspective is the ability to have schools select strategies aligned here, say grade level texts aligned to an academic discussion, right? And that we're looking for that in every classroom every day. We're doing all that coaching around it. We come alongside with the Elliott to say, is this strategy working? Are students more engaged? And then also, what is the complementary professional learning that we're providing for leaders, for instructional leaders, and for networks of teachers to come and learn aligned to that strategy? So that's really important as we think about our systems for improvement, is what is the professional learning and support we can provide? How are we guiding use of funds aligned to that strategy? How can we be more strategic with our Title I funds, our professional learning? All of those pieces will be connected to that. But absolutely, the teachers are part of building that plan and being communicated with about the progress monitoring.
Okay, thank you very much. Great presentation. Appreciate it.
I would even add, our staff is not unfamiliar with the calibrations that we're asked about, so we're getting ready the second week of February to go do coaching. And it's really about the leaders learning how to be better coaches. And so the teachers that we talk to will say, okay, we're coming in and we want you to give us feedback on how well we're having those conversations with you. It's not as much about what we've seen, but it's about us practicing what that looks like, how that sounds like. When we asked that question, was that helpful in gaining more insight to help develop the lesson more? And Mr. Wakefield and what we've done with the framework for effective teaching, going out and do calibrations so that we are really working and talking about the same language. So we're actually building upon some practices that we've had as we continue to expand to the area of Cognia. And as Mr. Ray mentioned, we have 4 people who are truly leading the work groups behind each of these different elements. And the teams that they have pulled together are across all departments to help continuously hone in. So if I could just say, I'm sure they're really watching from home, just like the Academy Awards, I'm sure, right? Julie Schick, John Waddlepool, Lindsay Beanie, and Tiffany LaFrenz, they have really spearheaded a lot of the work and are continuously working with work groups as we continue to hone and develop the framework.
So I want to go through this just so you see this again, because we went kind of quickly. So when you get on the website, if you go to staff sign in, and oh, it skipped. Yeah, there's a step, and it's at the bottom. There's a button that says staff login, and it would give you all this information. So you all have access to it. We just checked it, and you all have access to the information.
It's in the bottom left, and it says sign in
Right there.
SAMS.
Yep.
You don't need a username or any of that.
It should get you all in. Here's- we started this board workshop. We laid this out, I think, August, September with our first workshop. This is the second to the last workshop specific to these topics. We do have our final workshop that we outlined on June 10th, I believe it is, and it's about the evidence that we're working towards. So, or the evidence of our work. This is how we turn the organization through this work and connecting it. And that slide on the PowerPoint, if you go back to your PowerPoint, you know, my favorite slide, minus radical. We've used this slide with principals quite consistently. We've used it with you. Anytime we talk about the improvement in the school district, we've been using this slide. There was a presentation this weekend. I think you used the slide this weekend with a group of people. And we're moving towards that alignment and just that professional development conversation about where people go, what we approve as an organization as part of professional development is a huge project. And just so proud of the people working on this and getting us to this point of alignment. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, colleagues, before we adjourn? Seeing none, thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you so much for your amazing work on this front. We really appreciate it. We have no closed session tonight, so moving on. Item E is adjournment. So let the record reflect that the board workshop adjourned at 7:04 p.m. Thank you.